Hello friends, what's up? It's Jamie here. Welcome back to another Fangirl Fridays video. These are the videos where I make all of my favorite things everyone else's problem. For today's Fangirl Fridays video, I want to share some of my favorite books by Black authors in honor of Black History Month, because even with the US government and many corporations removing their DEI policies, that does not suddenly mean that Black people and other marginalized communities will cease to exist. We should all be reading Black authored books, not just this month, but every month. I have a lot of recommendations spanning several different genres that you can read all year long. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We're gonna kick things off with my personal favorite genre, fantasy, and what better way to start than with my current favorite book series, the Legendborn cycle by Tracy Deonn. If you've been following me for a while, then you know that I have talked about this series at length on the channel. I love these books so much, but for the uninitiated, the Legendborn cycle is essentially like a modernized King Arthur sort of retelling that tells the story of Bree Matthews. Following the sudden death of her mother, 16-year-old Bree Matthews is thrust into Legendborn society when she witnesses a demon attack on her first night at UNC Chapel Hill. The Legendborn Society is derived from King Arthur mythology, where the aptly named Legendborn hunt demons known as Shadowborn. A teenage mage named Sel, who calls himself a Merlin, erases Bree's memory of the attack. Or at least that's what was supposed to happen, because not only does Bree remember the events of the attack, it's because of them that she's able to recall a repressed memory involving her mother's death, that there was a Merlin at the hospital the night her mom died. Determined to uncover the truth about her mom's death, Bree infiltrates Legendborn society with the help of Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn. As they uncover dark secrets about the secret society, and as Bree learns how to channel her own unique magic, Bree must decide how far she's willing to go to find out the truth about what happened to her mom, and whether with what she's learned, if she's going to properly join Legendborn society or destroy it. I've already made 3 videos talking at length about my love for the series. I loved Legendborn, I loved Bloodmarked, and I'm so excited for Oathbound, which comes out next month. I pre-ordered the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition and everything that has like it's the special like hardcover, and it's got like the special like tapestry like art on the inside, and it has like extra content, and I'm so excited. Oh my god. I'm also going to get the Barnes & Noble like Legendborn paperback with the sprayed edges, like that exclusive edition, even though I already have a copy of Legendborn, but I simply must have the one with the sprayed edges because this is simply my favorite book series right now. Honestly, will probably end up being my favorite book series of all time. I love these books so much. If you like fantasy, I cannot recommend this series enough. It's a story about love and power and generational trauma and breaking cycles of abuse and revolution and telling racists to shut the fuck up. It has just some of the most incredible characters. I am fully 110% Team Bree. I absolutely adore Nick and William and Alice. I slightly tolerate Sal, but that's neither here nor there. I'm so excited and also very terrified to see where the story is gonna go in Oathbound and then the 4th book in the series, which will be the final book. But I fully trust Tracy Deonn to do whatever she needs to do and like handle this story with so much care. So I'm so psyched, man. And you should totally join in on the fun. I cannot recommend these books enough. You totally won't get traumatized or anything. Okay, I might be slightly traumatized. I mean, this is like overall a story. It's about, again, there's a lot of grief and loss and generational trauma, but it also really is a story about love and finding power within yourself. And oh my god, it's so incredible. You will laugh, you will cry, you will swoon. I love it so, so much. Please go read it. Next, we have the Blood Like Magic duology by Lizelle Sambury. This urban fantasy science fiction duology tells the story of Voya Thomas. Failing her calling, the trial that every witch must complete in order to receive their powers, puts Voya in an impossible situation. Her ancestor grants her an unprecedented second chance to complete her calling, but it comes with a huge catch. Voya must sacrifice her first love, or else her entire family will lose their magic for good. To make matters worse, the Thomas family losing their magic will put Voya's younger sister's life at risk. So Voya, who has never been in love before, must now find a guy to fall in love with and then subsequently kill before time runs out. Through a genetic matchmaking program, Voya is matched with Luke, who is infuriating and at first wants nothing to do with her, but as they grow closer, Voya only becomes more conflicted in her goal. Torn between her morality and her duty to her family and her bloodline, Voya must find something that her ancestor wants more than blood if she wants to save both Luke and her family. I'm gonna be honest, I still don't know whether Luke's name is pronounced Luke or Luck, or maybe even Luce. I went both books not knowing how to say this poor guy's name, so if anyone knows how to actually what his name is supposed to be pronounced, that would be very helpful if you could leave that in the comments. This duology felt like if Encanto was about a Black Canadian witch family with a lot more blood involved, and I loved it. I absolutely loved these books so much. They wrecked me in the best way possible. I saw so much of myself in Voya, it hurt my feelings. I felt very called out, and I was like, damn, I was not going into these books expecting to feel so called out. Like, damn. But I loved it. I loved Voya's character arc throughout these books. I loved watching her come into her own and become more confident in herself and her abilities as not only a witch, but as a leader. And I don't want to go too much into it because I want to spoil it, but oh my gosh, watching her growth made me so deeply, deeply emotional. I loved it so much. I really loved also just like the whole like the feeling of the Thomas family. I felt that they were all very distinct and unique, and they really felt like a real family. And I that read so clearly on the pages. Like I loved it so much. And like, oh my gosh, the way that these books confront generational trauma like left me in a puddle of my own tears. Oh my gosh, I cannot recommend these books enough. Next, we have the Blood Gift duology by N.E. Davenport. This fantasy sci-fi duology is a cross between the Legendborn cycle and the Poppy War trilogy that follows Ikenna Amari, a young Black woman who must combat racism and misogyny as she competes in deadly trials in order to become an elite warrior known as a Praetorian. But the title and status as a Praetorian isn't what Ikenna is really after. What Ikenna really wants is revenge for her grandfather's assassination, but between fighting to stay alive and questioning who she can really trust even amongst her closest friends, Ikenna is also hiding a secret power known as her blood gift. And if she's caught, she could face execution or worse. I really loved Kenna's character and her arc throughout these books. She's very strong in her convictions and very loyal and passionate, and I really admire how she follows through on her promises to forge a better world when she fully realizes just how, like, the full extent of how corrupt Marine is, and the world at large, but especially the Republic. And I also really appreciate how these books not only recognize but actively showcase that revolutions are violent. We wish that they didn't have to be. It would be preferable if they weren't, but a lot of the times violence and force are necessary in order to achieve tangible change and justice, which, you know, I feel is very timely right now. I feel like everyone, but especially those of us in the US, could benefit from reading this duology right now. Next, we have the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. This series of romance novels follows the three Brown sisters as they each find love in their respective novels: Get a Life, Chloe Brown, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, and Act Your Age, Eve Brown. In Get a Life, Chloe Brown, after a near-death experience, Chloe enlists the help of Red, her building's broody superintendent, to help her complete her Get a Life checklist to force her out of her comfort zone. Take a Hint, Danny Brown is a friends to lovers story where Danny fake dates her friend Zafir, who she is determined to just have a no-strings-attached kind of relationship with, whereas Zafir, who is a certified hopeless romantic, is determined to challenge Danny's pessimism around dating and relationships. And Act Your Age, Eve Brown is an enemies to lovers workplace romance where Danny must help the uptight and particular Jacob run his very understaffed bed and breakfast after she accidentally hits him with her car, while also trying to prove to herself and her parents that she can take charge of her life. Talia Hibbert is my absolute favorite romance author right now. Literally every single one of her books that I've read so far, I could not put down. I could not get enough of. These romances are spicy and heartwarming and so funny. Each of the Brown sisters is such a distinct character with quirks that makes them so lovable and hilarious. Each of their love interests were just, oh my gosh, the most swoon-worthy men. Even Jacob, who I really did not like at first when we meet him in Eve's book, but he very quickly grew on me too. My personal favorite book in the series is Danny's because her and Zephyr's story is my favorite. Zephyr is my favorite of the love interests, but Eve is my favorite of the sisters. That's not to say that I don't love Danny and Chloe and Jacob and Red. I love all of them, okay? They are all still characters written by Talia Hibbert, and they're all still incredible in their own ways. And these books also have just such great disability rep with Chloe's chronic illness and Jacob and Eve being autistic. You also get some bi rep with Danny. Like, all of these characters feel like such real and well-rounded people that it's so easy to get attached to them. I'm so excited to read every Talia Hibbert book ever, but until then, I cannot recommend the Brown Sisters series enough. It goes in order of Chloe, Danny, and then Eve, but you don't need to actually read them in that order if you don't want to, but I would personally recommend it just because I like going in order, but you do you. As long as you read these books, you really can't go wrong. Next, we have The Roommate Risk, also by Talia Hibbert. This romance novel follows Raoul Khan and Jasmine Allen. They have been best friends for 7 years, and while Raoul has pretty much been in love with Jasmine the entire time, he respects the fact that Jasmine doesn't do serious relationships ever, and they have just remained friends. That is until a plumbing incident leaves Jasmine temporarily homeless and she has to move in with Raoul, which turns out is maybe not the best move to let your best friend that you've been pining for years move into your house, because once they start living together, the lines between platonic and romantic start to blur, and these friends are both starting to wonder if they're willing to maybe risk it all. Talia Hibbert never misses. We've already established this. The Roommate Risk was my first Talia Hibbert book, and I loved every page. It's sexy and emotional, and Raoul Khan is truly a man written by a woman in the best way possible. Like, oh my god, if you love romance and you haven't read this book, you need to read it right now. Again, this applies to all Talia Hibbert books, but like, please, the Brown sisters and The Roommate Risk, you need to trust me on this one. You need to go read these books. Next, we have The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This romantic comedy follows Solange Pereira, who gets roped into helping her wedding planner cousin with a random couple's wedding. Solange doesn't know these people, but on the day of the wedding, she accidentally stumbles upon the bride in an intimate situation with a man who is definitely not about to be her husband. So Solange does what any rational person would do, and she crashes the wedding in hopes of preventing the groom from what she assumes would be making the worst mistake of his life. However, it turns out that the groom, Dean Chapman, was actually banking on this modern marriage of convenience to get this big promotion that he has been holding out for at his law firm. And now, because Solange feels terrible for meddling in Dean's life, she agrees to pose as his girlfriend in order to save face in front of Dean's lawyer colleagues. After Talia Hibbert and Casey McQuiston, Mia Sosa is one of my favorite romance authors right now. This book has everything I could want in a rom-com. It's fluffy, it's spicy, it's heartwarming, the banter is impeccable, it tugs at your heartstrings, it's the right amount of cheesy, and most importantly, the leads are both people that you're rooting for them. Like, Solange and Dean are such great characters. I love them both so much. Their chemistry is so incredible and electric and perfect, and they just make so much sense together. Just like with the Brown sisters, if you are looking for a really good rom-com, you really cannot go wrong with this one. Next, we have Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. This sapphic romance novel is a rivals to lovers story that follows Noah Blue and Sage Montgomery, rival artists who are assigned to work on the relaunch of a cult classic comic at their company. Although they are at different points in their careers as artists, both Noah and Sage really need this job to go well, so they must put aside their differences, and work as a team, or at least try to, while also resisting their attraction to each other. I absolutely demolished this book. I had a beach day over the summer and I brought this book with me. I read like 3/4 of it in that one sitting. I could not put it down for the life of me until I had to leave. I did also get slightly burnt because I was too hooked on the book and I forgot to reapply my sunscreen, but that is neither here nor there. I just absolutely fell in love with Noah and Sage, and I loved their banter and their chemistry. They were just so fucking cute. I also cried a bunch, way more than I was expecting to. Both of their storylines with their families hit me so hard, and I love how they really showed up for each other in that aspect. And also, I really liked how Noah and Sage continued to be competitive with each other even after they developed feelings and even after like they became an official couple. Sorry, I know that's a spoiler, but I mean it's a romance novel. Like, is that really a spoiler? I'm sorry. But like, I just really loved how they kept that like competitiveness with each other even after like the romance happened, because like, and like the romance was like continuing to like blossom and whatnot, because I feel like it just showed how much they respected each other as artists. Like, they weren't like, when they would do like contests, to not just be like, oh, you can win, babe. Like, they're like, no, like, I'm gonna, like, Noah would be like, I'm gonna give it my all, and Sage is like, I'm gonna give it my all, and may the best artist win. But they also like didn't let that like negatively affect their relationship, and I thought that that was really cool. Next, we have Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chensia C. Higgins. This sapphic romance novel follows Devon Miller and Chris Zavala, contestants on the fictional dating show Instant I Do, where strangers pose as engaged couples over the course of a 6-week period, completing various challenges where they have to ultimately convince their friends and families that they are really getting married for the chance to win $100,000. Devon and Chris have come onto the show for very different reasons. Chris is an influencer who is hoping that a stint on the show will be the big break that will further her career, while Devon is using the show as a chance to finally come out to her mother. When Devon and Chris are paired up together, it's impossible to deny that they have incredible chemistry. But reality TV poses unique challenges that make it difficult to establish a strong foundation for a serious relationship. And Devon and Chris must figure out whether they want a relationship that isn't just for the cameras. I loved this book. Devon and Chris are such great characters. It was so easy to root for them and their relationship. Their chemistry was actually off the charts. Like, the banter and the spice was so good. I'm also not really a big like reality TV person. I don't really watch reality TV besides like Dancing with the Stars, but I really enjoyed how it was incorporated in the story. This book is really great. I highly recommend it, but on a more serious note, again, things are really pretty bad here in the US right now. The Supreme Court case that legalized gay marriage is currently at risk of being overturned. I've heard a lot of mixed messages about that. I don't really know what's going to happen, but just for my fellow queers in the US, I hope that you are all staying safe and taking care of yourselves. And I realize that it may be very little consolation, but at the end of the day, you do not need the government's permission to be yourself, to be your authentic self and your identity, and they cannot take that away from you regardless of what happens with this case. So I hope that you all are just staying safe, taking care of yourself, and know that I love you. Next, we have Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar. This YA romance follows Felix Love, a black trans teen who falls in love for the first time while also grappling with his identity and contending with an anonymous student who begins sending him transphobic messages. This is a very sweet story of first love, and the way that it tackles gender identity and like the continuation of like questioning your gender identity even after initially coming out, in Felix's case, as trans, I thought was really moving and impactful, and I just really enjoyed this book. Next, we have Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Imide. This YA thriller has been described as Gossip Girl meets Get Out, where we follow Devin Richards and Chiamaka Adebayo, where the only thing that they have in common is being the only black students at an all-white private school. That is until they are both targeted by an anonymous stalker called Aces at the start of their senior year. virtually strangers, Devon and Chiamaka are forced to work together to figure out who Aces is and why they're after them, as Aces exposes their deepest, darkest secrets and threatens their futures in a very literal, life-threatening sense. This book had me so stressed out in the best way possible. I don't really typically read thrillers. I'm trying to branch out more, but Farida Abike Imide, she really knocked it out of the park for me. So I think maybe I'll start trying to read some more thrillers. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm like full on like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read more thrillers, but I am definitely a like I'm gonna read everything that Farida Abike Imide has ever written kind of girly. That I know for certain. I would definitely though look up the trigger warnings for this book. If I'm not mistaken, I think that at like the start of this book, it also might include some trigger warnings, like in like the actual like physical copy of the book. I don't remember though off the top of my head, but definitely look them up. It's a very like suspenseful and like psychological thriller kind of book. Like it can get very very stressful in that sense, but also it deals with some very heavy subjects. So just be aware of that. But it's a fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Next, we have The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Janata Petrus. This YA novel, with elements of fantasy, tells the story of Audrey, who has recently moved to Minneapolis to live with her father after she is caught having an intimate relationship with her pastor's granddaughter by her mother. Audrey then befriends Mabel, and the two develop a romantic relationship, only for things to take a turn when Mabel is diagnosed with a terminal illness. This book actually devastated me, like extremely. On the one hand, it's so bittersweet because on the one hand, you have Audrey and Maple's relationship developing, and the love that they have for each other is so special and so sweet. But then on the other hand, it's like you know that they're on borrowed time and you're just like waiting for the other shoe to drop. And oh my god, it's gut wrenching. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, it hurt me so much. I was a mess, an actual mess after reading this book. Like it, it really broke my heart, man. But it's so incredible, and like the book is like the fact that they were even able to like develop this relationship at all, that they had this time together at all. It's just oh my god, it's what an incredible read, but what a deeply emotional one. Definitely have your tissues ready. Like you're gonna need them for this one. Next, we have Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This YA novel follows Yahira and Camino, two teenage girls from New York City and the Dominican Republic respectively, who are brought together after a deadly plane crash reveals that they share a now deceased father. This book is a heartbreaking depiction of grief that perfectly utilizes dual POV, because getting to see Yahira and Camino's perspectives about their father really helped to illustrate all of the complex feelings that they both now have about their father, who they loved so much, but was also hiding so much from them. The shock and the sadness, the anger, the denial, the resentment, and how they as sisters are kind of like what is left of their father, and how do they move forward as sisters. Like it tackles all these things so beautifully. Elizabeth Acevedo did such an incredible job of balancing all of these conflicting emotions in the most beautiful, again, still like gut-wrenching, but just such a poignant way of doing so. I really cannot recommend this book enough. Next, we have Delicious Monsters, also by Lizelle Sambury. This YA psychological thriller follows two girls, Daisy and Brittany, in two timelines 10 years apart. Daisy in the past and Brittany in the present, as both of them navigate the deadly past of a mysterious mansion. Daisy can see dead people, but she quickly realizes that her experience with the supernatural has not prepared her for whatever is lurking within the walls of the mansion, nor what her mother is hiding. And Brittany wants to escape from the control of her abusive mother, who has become a best-selling author after claiming that a stay at this miracle mansion has reformed her and made her see the error of her ways as a parent. Brittany decides that the new season of her popular web series will investigate what happened to a young black girl in the mansion to finally expose her mother's lies. But the deeper she gets in her investigation, Brittany must decide whether it's her or Daisy's story that she should be telling. This book is so good, but I also need to preface that it is incredibly, incredibly heavy. Sexual assault is a very relevant, prevalent theme throughout the entire book. In not like a very like super graphic way, but it's a very important part of the story. It's very important for many of the characters. And so I would definitely keep that in mind going into this book. But holy shit, man, what a fucking book. I will say, I feel like that this book was kind of slow for me in the beginning, but once it picks up, it really picks up. I also I felt so much for Daisy and Brittany as characters. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about Daisy, but I feel like I really got so attached to her throughout the book, and I was instantly very attached to Brittany. They're both such incredible characters, and I don't want to spoil anything, but I feel like they both got the endings that they deserved as characters. Like, it made sense, like the endings that they got, and I'm very happy and satisfied with the endings that they got. And I really loved like the different timelines and like how much we found out about Daisy through her own timeline, but then also through Brittany's timeline, and the way all the reveals with all the mysteries happen. It was so good. Oh my gosh, what an incredible book. But again, I would definitely use your best discretion. If reading about sexual assault may be too triggering for you, I totally get it. Like, take care of yourself. You don't need to read this book if you feel like that would be the case. But if you can handle it, if you can stomach it, I definitely recommend this book. It is so incredible. Next, we have Family Lore, also by Elizabeth Acevedo. This adult magical realism novel follows the women of the Marte family, a Dominican American family that possesses magical gifts. Each of the women has their own unique ability, but the focus is on Flor, one of the oldest members of the family, who has the unique ability to predict the day when someone will die. So when Flor decides that she wants to host a living wake, a party to bring together her family and community and celebrate the life that she has lived, her sisters are surprised and also concerned. They don't know if Flor has foreseen her own death or if she's predicted someone else's and she won't tell anyone, not her sisters, not her daughter. They don't know what's going on, but Flor is determined to host this living wake. The novel takes place over the course of the 3 days prior to Flor's living wake, taking us through the lives of each of the Marte women, weaving through the past and the present, revealing their secrets, depicting the family's journey through their history, and preparing them for what is to come. This book is an intimate depiction of sister relationships, mother-daughter relationships, womanhood, sexuality, with a particular focus on middle-aged and older women who all have such unique and distinct voices. I will say that I prefer Clap When You Land to Family Lore out of the Elizabeth Acevedo books that I've read so far, but this is still an incredible book that I very much so recommend. Alright, next we have Dear Sendiden by Akwaeke Emezi. This memoir is a series of candid and intimate letters through which Akwaeke Emezi chronicles their tumultuous career as a writer, their equally tumultuous relationships with their family and past lovers, as well as the transformative revelations and decisions that they have made about their body and gender. If you only read one Akwaeke Emezi book your entire life, it has got to be this one. Not that I recommend limiting yourself to just one Akwaeke Emezi book because they are a phenomenal writer, but Dear Sendiden is a must read. They are able to conceptualize ideas about race and gender and sexuality and spirituality and love and writing in ways that are both so immensely profound and captivating, but also very accessible. Though definitely look up the trigger warnings for this book before jumping in because it can get very dark and heavy and honestly quite gruesome at times. So just be aware of that going into it. But whether you read the physical book or you listen to the audiobook, I've done both and thoroughly enjoyed both experiences. Just prepare to have your mind just absolutely blown. I will say though, I will always personally preferably recommend the audiobook because Akwaeke Emezi's narration just adds something so special to this already impeccable reading experience. Next, we have Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis. In this collection of essays, interviews, and speeches, Angela Davis draws from Black feminism, Intersectionality, and Prison Abolitionism to analyze and highlight how all systems of oppression and fights for liberation throughout history and in modern day movements are connected, from the Black Freedom Movement to the South African anti-apartheid movement, and from Ferguson to Palestine. This book to me is a foundational text for discussing and understanding liberation, and especially with the way that a lot of supposedly left-leaning people were so willing to throw Palestinians and immigrants and the trans community under the bus during this past US presidential election, it is abundantly clear that some of y'all really need to read this book, because we are not free until all of us are free, and Angela Davis outlines that and details that so perfectly in this book. Absolutely go read it right now if you have not already. And last but certainly not least, we have Feminism is for Everybody by Bell Hooks. In this nonfiction book, Bell Hooks argues that in order to achieve true societal liberation, people first have to recognize that feminism encompasses social issues that affect all of our lives, whether that be through race, class, gender, or sexuality. Bell Hooks explains that instead of just being reserved for academics, everyone can and should engage with feminism. I like this book because I feel like it's a good, accessible introduction to feminism for people, though I want to be very clear that this is like an entry point to feminist ideology. This book is by no means a super in-depth, all-encompassing analysis of every feminist thought ever, nor does it cover every social justice issue or political movement, but it's not really meant to do that or be that, I don't think. This whole book is really just Bell Hooks outlining how feminism is for everyone, and I think that she succeeds in doing just that. This book is also 25 years old, so I feel like it goes without saying that it's not the most up to date with today's like most pressing feminist issues, but again, I don't think that it needs to have been that for it to still be an important read. This is very much the kind of book that I would recommend to a family member or friend who isn't really immersed in feminism but is trying to learn and wants a place to start. If you're looking for something more in depth, I would again recommend Freedom is a Constant Struggle. I would also recommend So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Oluo, The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay, The Women's House of Detention by Hugh Ryan, Zammy by Audre Lorde, as well as other Angela Davis and Bell Hooks books. It's a personal goal of mine for this year to read more of their books so that I can give more specific recommendations. But again, if you're just looking for something to give to your family member or friend to introduce them to basic concepts of feminism, I would definitely recommend this book. Alright, before I wrap up today's video, I first wanted to quickly go through my immediate TBR of Black authored books. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all the Black authored books I plan to read this year. These are just the ones that I plan to read within the next couple of weeks or so, starting with The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa, the rom-com companion novel to The Wedding Crasher. I'm super excited for this one because I loved The Wedding Crasher. Next, we have Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharonda J. Brown. This is a Black feminist exploration of asexuality, and as an aspec person, I'm also very, very excited for this book. Next, we have, to literally no one's surprise, my most anticipated read of the year, Oathbound by Tracy Deonn, the third book in the Legendborn cycle. Words cannot like fully express just how excited I am for this book. I am so excited. March cannot get here soon enough. And then finally, we have Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Abike Imide. Like what I said when I was talking about Ace of Spades, I am going to pretty much read anything that Farida Abike Imide has ever written, ever. I'm really excited for this book. This is like a mystery about, so a girl goes to like a boarding school and her roommate disappears, and then there's also maybe some murders, and I'm excited for another great Farida Abike Imide thriller. So I can't wait to dive into this book. I can't wait to dive into all these books. I'm so excited. Like my TBR for this year, I feel like I've really curated a really, really, really good list of books, and I just cannot wait to start reading them. Alright, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Obviously, I make these videos in February for Black History Month, but I read Black authored books all year long, and you should be too, especially because I'm sure that in this current administration, book bans are going to become even more rampant. So we need to be collectively making even more of an effort to read Black authored books. On the screen right now, you will be seeing Black authored book recs that I mentioned in last year's video and in other videos that I didn't talk about in this video, but still wanted to share with you guys anyway because they're still great recs. Again, these are spanning several different genres, perfect to read at any point all year round. I'm sure you will find something that you love. And also, please drop your favorite Black authored books in the comments. I will pretty much read any genre, but if you know me, you know that I'm a sucker for fantasy in particular. But regardless, drop any recs that you have and I will add them to my extensive TBR. Once again, that's all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.